Guranga. Oma Ganatvanandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chaksura Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhayam Tadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavam Scha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Pradana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakan Zitam Scha Hey Krishna Karna Sindho Dinabando Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanjana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Prishubhanu Siddha Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakapa Trivyastra Kripa Sindhuvyavacha Patiranam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Pranityananda Shadvaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Usually when I mention my biography, it goes up to 1995, I think. But I've done things after that. In any case, currently I'm also the chairman of the Guru Services Committee. And also I'm the chairman of the IDRD, which I'm sure. Anyone know what IDRD stands for? Well, at least you'll learn something new. One thing new. IDRD means the ISKCON Dispute Resolution Department. So I'm the chairman there, but I'm also representing the Sannyasa Ministry and the Guru Services Committee. And in that department, we have the head of the legal department, who's from Singapore, Devaki Nandan. Devotee named Braja Bihari. Has anyone ever heard of Braja Bihari he's the head of ISKCON Resolve. Of course, everything here is very peaceful, so you don't have to worry about ISKCON. And then we have Mahavishnu Priya Devi Dasi, who's the head of the ISKCON Leadership Conduct Office. Mainly they deal with deviations. And then we have a devotee who's in charge of the ISKCON Mother Champakalata. It's the Justice Ministry. Believe it or not, there is justice within ISKCON. Or at least we're trying to create justice. And then we have a devotee who trains for investigators. So that's our one committee, and then the Guru Services Committee. I'm also theoretically still head of a committee that deals with the finances for all the members of all our leadership. So with this in mind, I'm going to read about Advaita Acharya from that point of view. Now, this may be some things you haven't heard before, but there's always a first time. So if there's any complaint, you can complain to the IDRD. or the ISKCON Resolve. So this is Adi Leela, chapter 12. expansions of Shri Advaita Acharya. Let's see if I got this right. Can we put that on the board? This is 12:12. 12:8. Adi Leela 12:8. What time do we go to? Because I'll save a little time for questions. Usually there's no questions, but this might invoke some questions. So hang on to your sari or your dhoti, whatever. Okay. Pratame ta ek. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Advaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhaktivedanta. Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela, Chapter 12, the expansions of Advaita Acharya, and text number 8. Pratame ta ekamata acharya ragana. Do they always leave out the A at the end? Who's Bengali here? Anyone Bengali? Do they always leave out the A at the end of the sentence? It would be Gan instead of Gana. Should it be Pratame ta ekamata acharya ragan? Is that more normal? Gana. Oh, they say Gana. Okay. Pache dui mata haila daivera karana. Okay. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. First of all the followers of Advaita Acharya shared a single opinion. But later they followed two different opinions as ordained by providence. Anyone know a verse in the Bhagavad Gita about following the same opinion? Who's a Bhagavad Gita scholar here? So, we don't expect you to know it if you're not a Bhagavad Gita scholar. Who passed the Bhakti Shastri test? Who's taking the Bhakti Shastri test? Who's read the Bhagavad Gita? Who knows what the Bhagavad Gita means? Who knows who spoke the Bhagavad Gita? All right. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Vyavasayatmaka buddhi ekaya kuranandana bahushaka vinantasya buddhiya vyavasayinam. Those who are on this path are resolute in purpose, and their aim is one. The intelligence of those who are irresolute is many-branched. Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam taya parita chetasam vyavasayatmaka buddhi samadona vidiyate. For those who are too attached to sense enjoyment, Bhogaishvarya, and material opulence, the resolute determination for devotional service does not take place. Bhogaishvarya prasaktana vyavasayena chaitana, and whose minds are many-branched. The resolute determination for devotional service is many-branched. So how do we know that who is the, you get an extra samosa, whatever they have today, if you answer this question. Who's the original spiritual master? Yes. Balaram. And who's his spiritual master? Krishna. So Krishna is the original, he's the origin of everything. So, where is Krishna represented in the material world? Anyone know where he is right now? Right here in the room? Besides on the altar as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Where else is he? What's that? He's everywhere. Yes, but what special place is he in right now? He's in our heart. That's quite special for us, because without him we can't do anything. So Paramatma, he has one opinion. How many Paramatmas are there? How many places is Paramatma? He's everywhere. He's in your heart, he's in my heart, he's in all the hearts. Imagine if he had a different opinion in your heart than he had in my heart. Unfortunately, there's no psychiatrist he could go to solve his problem. But luckily, Paramatma has the same opinion in all our hearts. He doesn't change his opinion, no matter whose heart he enters into. And the spiritual master, guru, the shiksha guru, the diksha guru, they're supposed to have the same opinion as Shastra. And Krishna spoke Shastra because his opinion doesn't change, especially about our eternality, about himself as Paramatma, and about the goal of life, namely to come back to Krishna. So if there are two different opinions, which opinion could be right? How many? There could be 3 or 4 opinions. So whose opinion is right? Yes.
One which matches the Shastra.
And how do you know which one matches the Shastra? Remember, but as William Blake, a famous English poet, once wrote, we both read the Bible day and night. I read black and you read white. Guru, Sadhana, Shastra. So Guru says one thing, something else, and Shastra doesn't agree with either one of them. So what's the final reference? Paramatma. And how do we know who's in our society? How do we know what Paramatma is saying? And we don't know what's first of all, how many people get up in the morning and speak with Paramatma? Honestly. As one devotee said, I had a dream last night, and Krishna came to me and told me I should become the Acharya of ISKCON. And another devotee, sannyasi, said that I also had a dream at night, and Krishna came to me and told me that someone was going to come to you at night and tell you were supposed to become an Acharya, but he was fooling you. So ultimately, we have to, just as we're accepting Krishna theoretically, as Prabhupada writes in the introduction, that the Acharyas may have accepted Krishna, the Shastra accepts Krishna, Krishna accepts Krishna, but in our particular state of consciousness, our level of awareness, for most of us, we at least theoretically have to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when we join ISKCON, we have to at least theoretically accept that Srila Prabhupada is the representative of Krishna. And therefore he's given us Shastra, and he's also given us the example of how to follow Shastra. And the result should be that, because, as I said this morning, the Guru is not really supposed to be expert in anything else other than 3 things. Namely, that he must be situated in eternality, Brahman, he must be accepting the guidance of Paramatma, and he must accept the guidance of Paramatma to help himself and others reach Krishna. That's all he has to know. He doesn't have to be a marriage counselor. I wouldn't recommend any guru become a marriage counselor, even if he was a marriage counselor. Just for a short experience I had, I was actually married in the movement for 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks. It may have been a little less, because I never found out what my wife's name was. It wasn't a marriage made in Vaikuntha. Any case, without going into the whole story, when my wife finally told me what her objective was, let's say we didn't meet eye to eye and everything. Anyhow, she told me she had some affair with some brahmachari in another temple in Canada, and that she had written to Prabhupada about this affair, which I didn't know anything about before we never got officially married, by the way. It was a fire sacrifice. And so she told me that Prabhupada read the letter, and he said, this letter is giving me a headache. He said, give it to the GBC. And that was actually the last time Prabhupada ever dealt with a marriage, even though he was the Acharya. And that was the last time I dealt with marriage, too. And now, not that I'm completely detached, but it was a good lesson for me. So, the Guru is not a marriage counselor, and even if he was, Prabhupada was probably the best marriage counselor, but he didn't want to get involved. Bhaktivedanta Acharya said, if you get involved between a husband and wife, the only thing they'll agree with is that to get rid of you. And the Guru is not a health coach. Now, I was the chairman of the Health and Welfare Committee. I was the Minister of Health and Welfare for ISKCON. But that was not a very healthy position for a sannyasi. Especially when the pandemic came, and I disagreed with half the other leaders about how to approach it. So they decided the best approach was to get rid of me. And that made me, that was good for my health, spiritual health. And the Guru is not a financial advisor. Because there's every possibility of everything going wrong, as you probably know. In Kali Yuga, there's always a possibility of marriage not working out the way everyone thought. That in Kali Yuga, every man wants a good slave for a wife, to take care of all his needs. And every woman wants a two-handed Narayan, take care of all her needs. Unfortunately, the goddess of fortune has become more rare in Kali Yuga, and Narayan, he's still in Vaikuntha. So, the Guru's his business is simply to become expert in explaining about we're not this body, which Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita. Repeat the words of Krishna. If you read Bhagavad Gita, you won't get any advice of how to win a horse race. You may find it somewhere eventually, but I've never found it. You may not get so much advice in financial dealings, except for give some. The only financial dealings that Krishna says is give up everything. Most people are not interested in that financial advice. So therefore, those who are approaching Bhagavad Gita in the line of Srila Prabhupada, which is what this movement is meant for, will find out about Brahman, we're eternal, as Krishna begins Bhagavad Gita. We'll find out that there's a guide in our heart called Paramatma, and he's happy when he's guiding us towards Krishna, our eternal relation with Krishna. And that's the whole Bhagavad Gita. That's it. And that's all the Guru is supposed to talk about. Shiksha or diksha. That's all this movement is meant for. You may get some blessings by giving some donation to the deities, but they're ultimately the deities will do that just to show you that they're there. Just to give you some awareness that actually you're giving a donation, although it already belongs to me, but I'll give you a little bit of encouragement so that you can understand that you made a good investment. But we're not supposed to do that life after life. And if we do that in Kali Yuga, your investment may turn up short eventually, because he may give you millions of dollars, millions even in whatever currency you want, and as Kali Yuga progresses, the only thing you can do with those dollars is maybe put them on your wall as wallpaper. That's what they'll be worth. So here, two different opinions is not a very good arrangement. That both of them can't be right. One of them could be right, the other one could be right, or both of them could be wrong if it's not Krishna's opinion. So our reference, because we don't know, we have so many authorities. Everyone, like he read off the list of the positions I have, so I guess I'm supposed to be an authority within ISKCON, and I added a few more to it. Like I oversee some countries in Europe, a number of them. And I can guarantee you, not everyone in those countries, especially the devotees, think I'm the absolute authority. Matter of fact, I don't know anyone who thinks I'm the absolute authority. Who's not? I mean, my disciples there are supposed to, but I'm not so sure. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada was asked, "How many disciples do you have?" At that time, he had just 60 temples all over India, and his reply was that he had 4. And everyone was quite surprised. The person who asked was quite surprised. But I thought you had like 50,000 disciples. He said, "No, I only have 4 disciples. My 2 hands and legs. Because they're the only ones I'm pretty sure they'll listen to me." So here are 2 different opinions. One might be right, the other may be right, or they could both be wrong if they're not in agreement with Krishna. So Prabhupada's purport. The words Daivyeva Karanam indicate that by dint of providence or by God's will, the followers of Advaita Acharya divide into 2 parties. Such disagreement among disciples of one Acharya is also found among the members of the Gaudiya Math. In the beginning, during the presence of Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Parabhajakacharya, Ashtatara, Shata, Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Prabhupada, all the disciples worked in agreement. But just after his disappearance, they disagreed. One party strictly followed the instructions of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, but another group created their own concoction about executing his desires. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, at the time of his departure, requested all his disciples to form a governing body and conduct missionary activities cooperatively. He did not instruct a particular man to become the next Acharya. But just after his passing away, his leading secretaries made plans without authority to occupy the post of Acharya, and they split into 2 factions over who the next Acharya would be. Consequently, both factions were asara or useless, because they had no authority, having disobeyed the orders of the spiritual master. Despite the spiritual master's order to form a governing body and execute the missionary activities of the Gaudiya Math, the 2 unauthorized factions began litigation that is still going on after 40 years with no decision. So just as after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada's disappearance, then I was told at least that actually some of the disciples did form a GBC, and they conducted that for some years, GBC activities. But one of his leading disciples, who was very close to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, who was a brahmachari, they thought he should become the next Acharya, because the culture of India, they never heard of a GBC. The normal succession was the Acharya appointed a next Acharya, and they take over the Math. Now Prabhupada Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada didn't appoint anyone as Acharya. So did he forget to do that? No. Just like Srila Prabhupada, November 2nd, 1977, 12 days before Srila Prabhupada's disappearance, two prominent politicians came to see him. One of them was a minister, a chief minister in one of the one of the big states in India. The other was another politician, a member of parliament. And they came to ask Srila Prabhupada who the next Acharya in ISKCON would be. And Srila Prabhupada's response was that I'm not appointing anyone as the Acharya, that all my disciples will become the next leader as much as they've understood and followed my instructions, then they become a leader. Not that I appoint someone leader. So that was what Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Prabhupada did. He gave instructions and he left it up to his disciples to follow them. Probably in one lecture he gave, he said that I'm giving you initiation. Now it's up to you to follow the instructions. There's nothing I can do if you don't follow the instructions. That's your free will. All I can do is give you instructions, and you follow that, and you'll make spiritual advancement. So Prabhupada gave the instructions. It was up to his disciples to follow it. Or Prabhupada said there are three classes of men or women. That one of them is those who follow, who hear and they understand. And the other class is those who hear and they don't understand, but they're willing to do something to follow and learn by experience. And the third class is people who couldn't care less if they understood or not, because then they have no intention of following, so they'll never learn. So at least we should try to be second class. If we don't understand immediately, like Arjuna, he heard for 2 hours Bhagavad Gita, and he understood and surrendered completely to Krishna. It may take us a little bit more than 2 hours. So we have to develop patience. But at least we should practice to the best of our ability, and then gradually the understanding will be there. We should have. Now, after the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, I remember when I was 1980, I was temple president of a temple, and I was completely involved in all the. You ever hear of the Zonacharya system? And who's heard of the Zonacharya system? You're all very innocent. I won't get into the details. Anyhow, there was a little controversy going on in the society, and it was quite disturbing to me, because many of the leading devotees, the initial gurus that Srila Prabhupada appointed, I knew personally. Some of them I was quite good friends with. Some of them I was actually assisting in different ways. And so when I was talking to some of our leaders, and we realized that actually this particular purport was being reenacted within our society. They probably didn't appoint anyone as an Acharya, and suddenly we had 11 Zonacharyas, which was much more complicated than just being an Acharya. So history repeats itself. The Gaudiya Math was, generally speaking, they came from the Vedic culture, some aspects of it, and they were learned scholars, many of them, and they got into difficulty. So Prabhupada started early forming the GBC, and he saw early, and he had to correct them, because right away there were so many problems. If you think it was Vaikuntha from the beginning, just ask the devotees. I was a temple president in, let's say I started in Buffalo, I was a temple president, an actual temple president in Houston and Dallas and Austin, Philadelphia. Just ask the devotees who was working under me if there was any problems with the authority or otherwise. I don't think they'll tell you it was all Vaikuntha. So Prabhupada had to try to correct course, because after all, the devotees that he had made from the West who were willing to follow him, because he tried in India, everyone had their own ideas about what life is about. And in India, he asked some of his leading persons, some very wealthy people, some very influential people, just give me one devotee, one of your children, I'll make them into a Brahmana. Brahmana? No way. He's going to become a lawyer or an engineer. He's not going to become a brahmana. So Prabhupada came to the West, and people didn't know about Krishna, didn't know hardly anything about Vedic culture. They were uncultured. And somehow or another became attracted to Srila Prabhupada, and they started to follow him. And those are the ones that Prabhupada was able to train up. Undoubtedly, these were not just ordinary personalities. These were devotees that Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada sent. But once you get into the West, as you can see, anyone who has experience here, it's not all Vedic culture. In India, sometimes they say they don't listen to the ladies, but here they always say, she'll be right. So, and no worries. There's no worry, right? Could you imagine a place where the people, they have no worries? And the whole society's falling apart and they're not worried about it. So as you notice in the West, people don't come here for culture. As I said before, when Prabhupada went to London and they asked the reporters actually Prabhupada, they said, Swamiji, what do you think of British culture? And Srila Prabhupada's reply was, I think it would be good. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, that wasn't Prabhupada. That was Mahatma Gandhi when he went there. And they asked him, the reporters, what do you think of British culture? And his reply, he said, I think it would be a good idea. So you can imagine when the culture people were raised in from their birth, it wasn't exactly Brahminical. And it's still not Brahminical. And out of those who were attracted to Prabhupada, as Prabhupada told Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was serving for some time, he said, unfortunately, Krishna didn't send me any first-class men, which means brahmanas, actually like the four Kumaras. So he worked with what he had, and he actually made a lot of progress. One time someone asked Srila Prabhupada, can you show me your mystic power? Now, let me, it's a little graphic, but I was just in New Govardhan. And in New Govardhan, they have this, next door, someone owns the land next door to us, and he allows camping there. And one of the Maharajas, when we were coming back, was telling me that when she was driving back, because they share a common bridge, and so you could see the people camping out that this other person allows pays. Makes a lot of money having these campers there. And she said that when she came back, she was quite shocked because the people on that side didn't have any clothes on. So Prabhupada had the same problem when he came to Morning Star Ranch. Some of our leading devotees who became leaders in our society, when he came there and he gave a program, at that time, clothes were optional when you worked on the farm. So one time Prabhupada came and he asked one of the devotees who was naked and he was hoeing potatoes. He said, what are you doing with your life? And the devotee couldn't understand exactly what he was referring to. Well, I'm hoeing potatoes. So that's how Prabhupada worked. And he actually elevated them. So someone asked Srila Prabhupada, can you show me your mystic powers? And Srila Prabhupada pointed his disciples, because they were thinking, show me some gold or something. Produce some gold out of nothing. So Prabhupada pointed his followers, his disciples there. He said, this is my mystic power. I came here to the West, and they're all hippies, and unhappy hippies. And I've turned the hippies into happies. And now they're dancing and chanting like jubilant peacocks in love of God. So he said, that's my mystic power. And that's what Srila Bhaktivedanta Acharya actually said is the actual qualification of an Uttama Adhikari. That they're able to turn the lowest class of people and put them on the path to become the highest. So Prabhupada worked like that. And of course, right away, even while he was here, there were so many deviations, but not to the extent that after he left. And then there are so many ideas that came up. And more or less, we have so many nice leaders, so many qualified leaders, relatively qualified. Prabhupada once said that in the absence of a big tree, a small bush like a castor bush appears to us to be big, but not compared to the actual tree. It's not so big. So similarly, after Srila Prabhupada left, instead of working cooperatively under one leader, under the leadership of the GBC, at that time they created so many different acharyas, actually acharyas, not just initiating gurus. We're not talking about initiating gurus. Prabhupada indicated that he wanted initiating gurus, but they created acharyas. And the acharyas, they got involved in, some of them got involved in everything. Building kingdoms, which require a lot of finance. I mean, I was part of one of those, I was a member of the kingdom. I wasn't the king, I was just one of the soldiers in the kingdom. We were going out and collecting for Krishna knows what. Didn't work out very well. And we did all kinds of things. I mean, Prabhupada was always encouraging me for book distribution. He wrote me several letters about book distribution, how he was happy that I was doing it. And I was out there selling records. I mean, Karmi records. And the problem with the Karmi records is that they were used Karmi records. They were surplus. And so when the people bought the Karmi, I mean, you can't imagine how we collected money back then. I won't tell you because you might do it. We don't want to encourage the wrong thing. It worked. And they played the records, but they had cracks in them, so they'd skip. Some they were not very happy about their purchase, by the way. So we didn't go. One devotee came there. We had different devotees were doing it. So someone came one time to the same place we had just sold the records, and people had listened to the record, and they had escaped as quickly to get out of there before, for their own safety. Anyhow, we did different things, financial things, and health was not exactly a priority all the time. Marriage counselors, every guru had to make the ladies and the men happy and do marriage counseling. And some of them worked. Some of them. Repeat the word, some of them. It didn't work out as we thought, everyone thought it was going to work out. And in case we learned, we ended the official Acharya system, but still we can see that not everyone in our society, all the leaders in our society agree with each other. Because could you imagine if you were a temple president and you had 25 different initiating gurus and they all were telling the disciples what to do and they were all different? You'd have to have you'd have to be a Brahmin in a different universe with 25 heads to figure it out. So, believe it or not, there are some problems once in a while in our society due to that. And since what is that? Because whatever it is, we can stop it. Our committee, not just me, I couldn't possibly deal with it. Our society, but especially our committee, has to deal with any kind of major deviation of our leadership in that particular service in the society. And I have a number of things, but that engages me quite a bit, unfortunately, especially this year. So there's a problem. The problem is not that the devotees are getting initiation. There's a class of people called Ridviks. Anyone hear of the Ridviks? We've got a few more hands there. Got a lot of innocent devotees here. There's a class of people called Ridviks. They say that only Prabhupada can give initiation. Now, how did they figure that out? Did Prabhupada come and tell them that only he's going to give initiation? They never claimed that, because if Prabhupada came and told them that, then Prabhupada would be talking to them. And if Prabhupada was talking to them, they should become the Acharya. But they don't say that Prabhupada came and told them that they should become the Acharya. They've reached the conclusion themselves that only Prabhupada can give initiation, which means that although that they don't claim to be the Acharya, they want to act like the Acharya because they know something that no one else knows. Or even they quote something from somewhere, whatever they quote. But that's their interpretation. There's nothing directly to Prabhupada saying that. Only I will give initiation. Here's one letter, it says, henceforward. But Prabhupada didn't even write the letter. It was one of the devotees who became an Acharya. So he didn't agree. Anyhow, so it doesn't make any sense. So Prabhupada did want devotees. He said, even he wrote to me one time. He said, please read, at the end of the letter, he said, please read all the books that I've written, and sometimes afterwards you'll have to help carry on the disciple succession. So did Prabhupada want me to become the Acharya? Not at all. Because he wrote me other letters that, later on that showed that he didn't think I was going to become the Acharya. But he wanted me to carry on the disciple succession, help carry on the disciple succession. So he wanted a lot of devotees to help carry on the disciple succession. Now, what does that mean? He wanted devotees to give initiation, but he wanted them to teach only about 3 things. Generally guide the disciples in how to Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan, just like Prabhupada did. Now, as the Acharya, earlier on he had to tell them, I joined actually 68, so that's kind of like a junction. Before, Prabhupada was still Swamiji when I joined, and shortly after that, maybe a year after it, he became Swamiji. Prabhupada. So there, we had 3 books, and the only books that we had were the 3 Bhagavatams that Prabhupada brought over with him. We didn't have a Bhagavad Gita. We didn't have anything else. We only had Back to Godhead. And that wasn't even written by Prabhupada. It was written by his disciples. So Prabhupada had to do everything. He had to teach people how to, he was a marriage maker. He told my temple president when he asked him, because I wasn't really, believe it or not, so anxious to get married. But I was told that if I get married, then my wife would cook a feast. So I thought, well, at least we get an extra feast. She wasn't a very good cook, by the way. So Rupanuga, my temple president, wrote to Srila Prabhupada and said, is it all right if myself, this Maharaji, gets married? And Prabhupada said, yes, they have my blessings, and afterwards they should open a temple together, because Prabhupada was interested in opening temples at that time. We were all... So Prabhupada he agreed. I didn't, I thought maybe Prabhupada would say, no, stop. So he agreed, so he got married. So he's a marriage maker. As you read, I have a book called Help This Meet You in Good Health, and a lot of it part of it has to do with Prabhupada's instructions about health, which he gave primarily before he became Prabhupada. He had to instruct all his disciples how to eat properly, what kinds of medicines to take. So he was a health guru because he was the Acharya. He started the movement. Now, later on, when we imitate Prabhupada and we try to do things where we're not qualified, if you become an initiating guru in this society, I remember one time Indradu Maharaj. Anyone ever hear of Indradu Maharaj? Got a few more hands there. Yes, good. So, Indradu, we were discussing about his disciples. So he said one disciple, he came up to him, there's in Russia, Vladivostok, there's early initiations, and the disciple asked him at the initiation, he said, Guru Maharaj, can you please tell me what my name means? So listen carefully. Do you know what his name was? Krishna Das. So he just got initiated into the Hare Krishna movement, and he was asking what his name, Krishna Das, meant. Another disciple came up to Indradu Maharaj, and he said, here's a donation. He gave Indradu Maharaj a nice donation. And so Indradu Maharaj asked him, he said, what's your name? And the devotee looked at him and said, Guru Maharaj, you don't know what my name is? And Guru Maharaj said, no, I don't. I'm not omniscient. He said, I have so many disciples. So he said, Guru Maharaj, you're not omniscient? Can I talk to you afterwards? Luckily, he didn't ask for the donation back, as far as I know. So our culture is such that we have this culture of who the guru is supposed to be. Either he's as good as God, and therefore, if I asked him, which horse should I bet on? And if he tells me, then, if it doesn't come in, then, my faith has been cut in half. Or he's useless. He doesn't know everything, so how can I trust him? That's a whole other conversation. Prabhupada said, actually, when they asked him, they said, the Prabhupada said, the Acharya is not supposed to know everything. He knows whatever Krishna tells him. Ask him, do you think Krishna is going to tell the Acharya which horse to bet on? We're against gambling. Krishna is not going to tell nor will the Acharya repeat it, even if Krishna told him. So the Acharya, he's just like today's Advaita Acharya's appearance day. So this word Prabhupada said is Bhakti Shashama. Bhakti Shashama is the definition of Advaita Acharya. He was called Acharya. We have Mahaprabhu, we have Lord Nityananda Prabhu, we have Gadadhar Pandit, we have Srivas Thakur, and we have Acharya. Advaita Acharya is the Acharya. He's the Acharya because he shows us how to spread the Hare Krishna movement. That's what the Acharya means. How to teach people about Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. Prabhupada would sometimes, he talked to people, like I give the example of when Prabhupada was talking to one famous race car driver in London. And for 10 minutes at least, Prabhupada was talking about race cars with him. Cars. Does that mean Prabhupada had an interest in race cars? Not at all. Because he made friends with him, then he could tell him about Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Go on the street and try and stop someone trying to sell them a book, Bhagavad Gita, and tell them, my dear sir, this is a book about you're not this body, that actually there's a God is in your heart, and you should go back to Golokam Vrindavan and surrender to a cowherd boy. Do you know how many books he'll sell? Well, here you might sell a few. But I had experience like that trying to sell books. I decided one day I was going to go out. This is at the Texas State Fair. And there were no anyone from India there. It was all Texans. And I'd tell them exactly what I understood was in the book. And I did that for 1 hour. And do you know how many books I sold? And then I tried an experiment. I did my usual lines. Hi, are you from Texas? And most of them said yes. It's like we knock on doors sometimes. When people answer, we ask, excuse me, do you live here? Because you have to get a yes, yes. Do you live here? Do you have any children? Yes. Do you have a job? Yes. What kind of work? Wow, you're very good, Wow, you must be, are you good at it? Yes. Wow, this book is for you. Can you give a donation? Okay. Sort of psychology. So Prabhupada got yeses. He made friends with people. Then he told them about Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. He just didn't leave it at the, hey, where can I buy a good car? No. He told them about, that's why he wanted to talk to these people. So Prabhupada, his only business was actually Brahman, Paraman, Bhagavad. There's nothing else he said. He said things that we can find as controversial, but if you're going to talk to someone and try to tell them, just give an example. They sent me down to a place called Coconut Grove, my temple president, to open a temple there. And from there I had a hitchhike to Houston, Texas, around 3,000 kilometers away. And I started helped assist to start a temple with Vishnu Jan Maharaj, who's a very nice devotee, and his assistant Srinath. So the only way we could support our temple was with book distribution. There was no one there to help us. The little Indian community, they helped out a little bit, but not very much at that time. And we didn't sell records. We had nothing, we only had books. There was nothing else we could sell. So there was one place called Vidor, Texas. Vidor, Texas was the headquarters of the Ku Klux Klan. Anyone ever hear of the Ku Klux Klan? Ku Klux Klan, did you ever hear about people getting hung in the South in America? People who looked a little strange, different background. I remember the first time I went out in Dallas, Texas to distribute books, I got arrested. Four of us got arrested. And do you know what the charge was? Because we went on and we only had dhotis and tilak and whatever, shaved head. We got arrested for impersonating women. They put us in jail over the weekend. And then we were put in before the judge, and the lady came to testify against us. So of course we had our dhotis on, but it was at night, so she couldn't see our faces, so she couldn't really identify us, that we were the ones who were wearing the dresses, although we were there wearing a dress, right? So because she couldn't positively identify that we were the ones who were wearing the dresses, going door to door, so the judge dismissed us. Anyhow, I have a lot of stories like that. That's where in Vidor, Texas, Ku Klux Klan. If we would have went like this, I wouldn't be here telling this story right now. I can guarantee you. What's that? Yeah, but they didn't have shaven heads. And they didn't. They wore white robes, and we had saffron on. So we came from a different. So we went there. We went in Karmi clothes at that time. Regular dress, Western dress, and we didn't tell them a word about Krishna consciousness. We just said, "Hi, are you from Texas? Here, take this book. We're distributing it to all the nice people here in this wonderful city called Vidor, Texas, with all the wonderful people here." They go, "Yeah, no worries, mate." That's. So we do a talk. How many kids? Wow, you got a good family. Wow, that's fantastic. Hey, can you give a donation? Yeah, why not? You seem like nice people. Why not? So there's different ways of dealing with people, and Prabhupada was expert at dealing with people, so he could actually introduce. We distributed more Bhagavad Gitas there than anywhere else in Texas. Everyone there bought a Bhagavad Gita because they were not exactly Brahminical. They had the wrong ideas, but they were pretty simple people. And if you were friendly with them, they reciprocated. So Prabhupada was like that too. Now, Prabhupada explained here in the first part, and I'll stop pretty shortly, that Prabhupada established a movement which was going to be based upon his books, based upon his teachings, based upon his example. Why? Because he was actually an Acharya. He was actually situated in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to turn hippies into happies and spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. I remember, just to give a short story, in Philadelphia in 1969, Boston 1969, Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Prabhupada's disappearance, we were doing kirtan, Prabhupada came to visit the first temple in the movement, where there was a ISKCON press, where we were publishing our own books. He came to visit there. ISKCON press moved to the the Boston temple, and it was on the second floor. I remember Prabhupada was walking up the steps, and at that time they had a picture on the top of the steps of Panchatattva, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with his arms outstretched. And suddenly, I was part of the bhajan group that was there from Prabhupada to greet Prabhupada when he came. And suddenly the picture began to glow of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada walked up the steps, and the whole room turned into Vaikuntha for me. And I think for everyone else too. And then Prabhupada sat down in Vyasasan and looked at me, and I could see he knew exactly who I actually am. And then Prabhupada gave a lecture about Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and I wasn't the only person in the room crying. So Prabhupada had quite a impact by his presence. He transformed a mundane situation to something transcendental. I didn't always have that experience, but often I had that experience when I was Prabhupada's association. So Prabhupada was not an ordinary initiating guru. He was actually an acharya. And he set the bar quite high for an acharya. Not everyone becomes an acharya, but an initiating guru, Prabhupada gave certain qualifications, which would be healthy to become an initiating guru. And it's healthy to become an initiating guru if you accept the position as simply as Prabhupada in his last will, he only mentioned two things. That the initiating guru he said that the management should continue as it is. The GBC should be the ultimate authority, and that he gave instructions how to safeguard his properties that ISKCON had at that time. He did not give any instruction that the guru should become by dint of being a guru, initiating guru, should become not only the initiating guru, no one else, unless they're authorized, should become a manager of ISKCON's properties. Nor should we assume that we're the controllers of the members of the society. We're servants of the members of society, and as servants of the members of the society, we may give them direction. The temple president gives direction. The GBC is supposed to supervise and make sure that everything is going according to Prabhupada's instructions. An example, so the members are actually learning about Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Those three things. That's what this movement's meant for. It's not meant to establish kingdoms, manage wealth, direct disciples to do this and that. Those are supposed to be done by persons who are devotees who are authorized to do that. Otherwise, we'll get into trouble. As it says in Bhagavad Gita, if we do someone else's duty, then we'll get into trouble. Not only we won't do our duty, we won't have time to do our real duty, but we'll do someone else's duty so they won't be able to do it. So we have to be careful about. But we've established a culture in ISKCON. It's a little complicated, so we won't get into that. But here, the result is that we don't make as much spiritual progress as we should be making. We're supposed to take over the world, and we're a little slow in doing it. But the world's not waiting for us to be taken over, by the way. Therefore, Prabhupada writes here, therefore we do not belong to any faction, so the two parties busy dividing the material assets of the Gaudiya Math institution stopped the preaching work. We took up the mission of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur and Bhaktivedanta Thakur to preach the cult of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu all over the world, under the protection of all the predecessor acharyas. We find that our humble attempt has been successful. We follow the principles especially explained by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur in his commentary on the Bhagavad Gita, verse beginning Vyavasayatmika Buddhi Ekahu Kurunandana. According to this instruction of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, it is the duty of a disciple to follow strictly the orders of his spiritual master. The secret of success and advancement in spiritual life is firm faith in the disciple in the orders of his spiritual master. The Vedas confirm this. Yasya deve para bhaktira yatha deve tata guru tasyate kahita yadartha prakashkante prahatmanaha. To one who has staunch faith in the words of the spiritual master and the words of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the secret of success in Vedic knowledge is revealed. The Krishna Consciousness movement is being propagated according to this principle, and therefore our preaching work is going on successfully, in spite of the many impediments offered by antagonistic demons, because we are getting positive results from our previous acharyas. One must judge every action by its result. The members of the self-appointed acharyas party who occupied the property of the Gaudiya Math are satisfied, but they can make no progress in preaching. Therefore, by the results of their actions, one should know that they are asara, or useless. Whereas the success of the ISKCON party, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which is strictly following Guru and Gauranga, is increasing daily all over the world. Srila Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur wanted to print as many books as possible and distribute them all over the world. We have tried our best in this connection, and we're getting results beyond our expectations. Prabhupada established many things. Here he's emphasizing book distribution. He established gurukuls. He established farm communities. He established devotee care. He established so many different things. Now, because we have had divisions amongst our leadership, and they've gotten themselves, some of them got into trouble, at least in parts of the world, we can see that our preaching is diminished. Luckily, by divine arrangement, Krishna sent the Indian communities all over the world. And because he sent the Indian communities all over the world, who have actually come here with some culture, at the very least their grandmothers told them something. So because of that, we can see the Indian communities come here because, they've had previous pious activities, and Hare Krishna movement is not so strange to them. If they hear about God being a cowherd boy, they think, well, that's cool. Cow protection, At least the first generation who've come here will think like that. But where are the Westerners? They're not exactly crowding you out right now. We're comfortable in this relatively small temple. But when I joined the movement, when I saw the movement develop, there were hardly, for most of the time, there was hardly any devotees from the Indian community coming. It was all Westerners. But once the leadership got into difficulty and began to especially fight with each other, and because of that, they lost bhakti, love for each other, and fighting with each other over the assets of ISKCON, claiming that they were supposed to direct the members of ISKCON, they were supposed to control the assets, and they lost the taste for bhakti. They had no time to chant their rounds anymore. They had too many disciples to deal with, too many marriage problems, too many health problems, and they were supposed to know everything. They were supposed to be Prabhupada for all of them. And therefore, they had no time for spiritual life, and therefore, at least generally speaking, a lot of them found their soulmate. But it wasn't Srimati Radharani. Because they lost the taste for Krishna consciousness, at least temporarily. So we have to be careful. We've created a culture. We've changed things a little bit. But we should know that our initiating guru, we have to follow strictly his instructions. But he should also follow the instructions of his superiors, the temple president, the GBC. He's not an independent authority because we're all dependent upon Prabhupada. If Prabhupada is in our consciousness, then we have the Acharya there, and we become ecstatic because he's actually on the state of ecstasy and love for Krishna. And if Prabhupada's not there, it'll be very doubtful exactly what our consciousness is going to be. So we have to follow Prabhupada's instructions. So all of us, not only we ourselves are obligated to follow them, to know what they are, but even our leadership is obliged to follow those instructions. And this is a very important instruction. As Prabhupada said, your love for me will be shown by how you work together to keep this movement together after my disappearance. And if we have a culture where we have too many independent authorities who are absolute, then everyone becomes absolute. We have a culture of everyone is absolute. Even when I was talking in my GBC zone, I was trying to give some instruction to some of the brahmacharis there, and they started to, and we had a committee trying to, and they started to preach to me the opposite thing. I was talking about cooperation, and they were preaching to me why they shouldn't cooperate. And I was trying to help them. So everyone has become absolute. They're following the example. But without Prabhupada. Prabhupada wasn't. Why I've been trying to listen to Srila Prabhupada's, because hardly, in most of the temples nowadays, we have so many devotees who are fantastic kirtan leaders, beautiful voices, but we don't always hear Prabhupada's chanting. So I was trying to, because even for years I was trying to hear Prabhupada. And then Krishna gave me a little intelligence to hear Prabhupada. And I was seeing that actually Prabhupada's chanting like a child calling for his mother. So that's our goal, to come to that platform. And then you can cooperate with everyone, because Krishna will give the intelligence exactly how to deal with all living entities in a Krishna conscious way to help them become Krishna conscious. Till that time, we have to take shelter of Prabhupada. Even if we're not so conscious of exactly how exalted Prabhupada is, still he's the founder Acharya. And his instruction, if we want to become Krishna conscious, then we have to see his example, his instructions, and test it out, and follow those who are actually following his instructions and example. Try to understand everything. And then, even sometimes it appears our leadership is not quite up to the mark in that, still we should follow them under Prabhupada's directions. Try to pray to Prabhupada to understand how to follow his disciples, also his or the disciples of his disciples, if they're authorized to do something. Because none of us are going to be perfect. Our only perfection is if we'll become perfect if we follow the example of the Acharya and those who are following the Acharya. So I'll stop. That's Advaita Acharya's example. Thank you very much. Shri Advaita Acharya ki jai. Samaveta Bhaktivedanta ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Any questions? Yes. Microphone.
Thank you for the wonderful class, Maharaj. It's very nice. Just one question. You were saying that Krishna is telling all living entities the same thing in the heart.
Well, he's trying to do it. That's Paramatma is trying. He's not, as you can see, if you look around, sometimes he's not so successful. The message of Godhead is the same in everyone's heart. The message of Godhead is the same, but a lot of people don't want to listen to the message of Godhead. So therefore Krishna doesn't talk to them. He lets his material energy talk to them. He gives them remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness, but not in terms of Krishna consciousness. He reciprocates with them according to their desire, not only exactly what he wants to do.
Thank you.
Anything else?
So there's no one voice, even sometimes unless it's among devotees who have Krishna as a center, otherwise there's no one voice from the Paramatma. Is that correct, Maharaj? If we talk to outside people, non-devotees.
Well, first of all, Krishna wants us, for instance, what does Krishna say? If we read the scriptures, Prabhupada give us, like Sri Rupa Goswami, he tells us that we should honor the devotees who chant the holy name. We should cooperate with the devotees who have determined to make spiritual advancement under the guidance of the Acharya. We should cooperate with them to spread Krishna consciousness, and we should always work under the directions of the Acharya. So, I think we'd all agree with that. We don't always follow it, though.
One more question, Maharaj.
Yeah.
The instruction from Guru, like we have to follow the instruction.
Yeah.
What if Guru don't give any specific instruction?
Well, the instruction is, how did you accept a Guru who never gave any instructions?
Any specific instruction?
What is he supposed to tell you?
I know we have to follow the 16
If
round.
you tell, according to the Vedic injunction, if you're a brahmachari, and that's the Guru tells you to take Prasadam, you're supposed to fast. We'd have a lot of thin devotees around here. Or at least the telephone bill would go up quite a bit. No, specific instruction. The main instruction is, follow Prabhupada. And Prabhupada's giving us enough instructions. Have a morning program every morning in your house, even if you can't come to the temple. That's the instruction. That's Rupa Goswami's instruction. We have so many instructions. What do you need any more from your initiating guru? Let's follow what he's already given. Follow Prabhupada and the Acharyas.
Thank you, Maharaj. Any more questions? Anyone? So
It's all right. We don't have to anymore. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai. Mahahotsava Abhibrav Srila Advaita Acharya Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande.
Hare His Holiness Prahladananda Swami Maharaj Ki Jai. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Please give a big round of applause to Maharaj for coming here again. On it.